Well, welcome back to another episode of Teology, where I've got my cup of tea and my copy of the Confession. And this morning we're continuing through chapter 4 and actually going to finish it because it's a very short chapter. But before we do that, just a shout out to Trevor at Morning Star ARP Church in Vero Beach, Florida, a friend of mine. And he does these coffee mornings where he brews a cup of coffee and has a chat. And as you can see, I kind of basically stole that idea for theology from him. So a few things, Trevor. We are Gloucester Presbyterian, Gloucester EPC. That's Dr. Foster went to Gloucester, and we're about 2 hours and 15 from London west. But if you're from Morningstar and you're watching this, do leave a comment. Love to know that you guys are watching us too. Oh, and I've got my nice Wally mug, a mug I did actually get from Walt Disney World, Florida. So it seemed fitting for this morning. So with that, let's just dive into chapter 4, section 2. So we talked about general creation in section 1, the Holy Trinity, creating everything for his own glory. And now we go to the specific creation of man and woman. So after God had made all other creatures, he created man, male and female, with reasonable and immortal souls, endued with knowledge, righteousness, and true holiness, after his own image, having the law of God written in their hearts, and power to fulfill it, and yet under a possibility of transgressing, being left to the liberty of their own will, which was subject unto change. Besides this law written in their hearts, they received a command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which while they kept, they were happy in their communion with God, and had dominion over the creatures. So there's a lot of things we could talk about in that, but to be brief, I'll just highlight a few things there. Certainly, the confession is just using biblical language, the language of Genesis 1 and 2, to speak to us that man was created, that man did not evolve, that man was created specifically by God. And the other things that the Bible speaks of here, that the confession points out, is that man and woman were created with immortal souls, so that death is not the end. When we die, those in Christ go to be with Christ. Those who die apart from Christ go to be without him. And the other things to note are being created after God's own image, and it lists there some attributes of true holiness and righteousness. That is one of probably the biggest points of creation, specific creation, is being made after God's own image, something we don't have time to get into this morning. I think the last thing to point out is, last two things is, as we touched on earlier, that God was not the author of sin. Here, the confession points out that while they were created holy and good, they had the ability to transgress. And we know the rest of the story that they did. And so sin, again, is laid upon their feet, laid at their feet, as well as Satan. But it does remind us that they were given a command, and that while they were obedient to that, they lived in happy communion with God. And something that the picture of Eden looks forward to is that day of wonderful restoration, when it's not a garden anymore, but a city, and where the saints dwell with God face to face. So there we go, special creation, the wonderful creation of man and woman. And really with that, we are done with chapter 4. So a little bit shorter of one. So hope you enjoyed. Hope you have your cup of tea. And yeah.